हे स्टूडेंट्स, वेलकम टू द न्यू वीडियो। और इस पर्टिकुलर वीडियो में हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस ऑफ चैप्टर कंट्रोल एंड कोऑर्डिनेशन। इट्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट चैप्टर फॉर योर board examination, and let's get started. So these are the particular questions that I'm going to discuss in this particular video. I have selected 5 different important questions. So let's get started. So first question says कि what are synapse and क्या होता है, what happens at the synapse. So let's get started with the synapse first. So you already know that I'm discussing the first question, and you already know about neurons or nerve cell. So ये हमारी बॉडी का सबसे लॉन्गेस्ट सेल है, longest cell of our body, and a neuron has the following parts. A neuron has the following parts, right? So you must know how to draw a neuron. So you are able to see these processes. These processes are known as dendrites, and this is the cell body, the nucleus, and the structure that I'm drawing right over here is this is the myelin sheath. I'll discuss what is a myelin sheath in just a bit. So this is a rough diagram and a crude diagram of a neuron, and let's label it first. So these structures, these hair-like structures you are able to see, these are dendrites. Right after dendrite, आपको दिखाई दे रहा है, this is cell body. This structure, this structure right over here, this is the cell body. और cell body के center में you are able to see the nucleus, the director of the cell. After the cell body हमें दिखाई दे रहा है this structure, this is known as axon, and axon के ऊपर we are able to see this structure, this is known as myelin sheath, and at the end of the axon this is known as nerve ending. And we are seeing certain gaps, seeing certain gaps जहाँ पर myelin sheath absent है. Right over here myelin sheath यहाँ पर absent है, यहाँ पर भी myelin sheath absent है, यहाँ पर भी myelin sheath absent है, and इनको हम लोग बोलते हैं nodes of Ranvier, after the name of a scientist, right? So it's a structure of a neuron, and it has 3 main parts: the cell body, these processes are known as dendrites, and emerging from the cell body, this structure, this is known as axon, right? So the dendrite initiate the nerve impulse. So dendrite initiate the nerve impulse, and that nerve impulse then goes to the cell body, and after cell body that impulse goes towards the axon, right? And that nerve impulse reaches at the nerve ending. And let's see कि जब वो impulse जो कि generate हुई थी dendrite में, then move to the cell body and then moving towards the axon, और कहाँ पर at the end reach करती है वो nerve impulse nerve ending में. Let's see कि nerve ending में क्या होता है, right? So you are able to see this cell body, the dendrite, and the axon, and the nerve ending, right? So at the nerve ending another neuron initiate. So this is the second neuron, the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon and the nerve ending. Again this is a neuron, the dendrites, and the axon, and the nerve ending. And you are able to see in this particular area, that I am highlighting, iske andar we are able to see the gap between the two neurons, the gap between the two neurons, and this gap is known as synapse. What we call this gap? This gap is known as synapse. So very simple, synapse is a gap between the two neurons. And let's just see कि इस गैप में एक्चुअली होता क्या है, बिकॉज आई जस्ट टोल्ड यू कि ऊपर वाले डेंड्राइट में नर्व इम्पल्स विल बी जनरेटेड, नर्व impulse will be generated in the dendrite, and that nerve impulse will travel towards the cell body, and from the cell body it travels towards the axon, and at the axon, after reaching the axon, it will reach to the nerve ending. Now we have a gap over here, the gap over here between the two neurons, and the nerve impulse cannot jump from this neuron towards this neuron because the gap is really large, the gap is really large, so nerve impulse cannot डायरेक्टली जंप फ्रॉम हेयर. सो लेट्स सी कि इस गैप में जो जिसको हम लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं, साइनैप्स बोल रहे हैं, एक्चुअली में क्या होता है. सो व्हाट आर द कंपोनेंट ऑफ अ साइनैप्स? तो साइनैप्स इंक्लूड दिस लेयर द नर्व एंडिंग लेयर, the gap, and this layer, the dendrite of another neuron. So what synapse include? The nerve ending of the above neuron, the gap between the neuron, and the dendrite of the further neuron. Let's just draw that and understand that. So this is the nerve ending of above neuron, this is the gap between the neuron, and this is the dendrite, this is the dendrite of the further neuron. So let me label it for you. So this is the nerve ending of the previous neuron, this is the gap which I'm calling the synapse, and this is the dendrite of the further neuron, right? So the nerve ending, this nerve ending of the above neuron before the synapse contains many chemical filled vesicles, many chemically filled balloons. You understand it like this. So here we have many balloon like structure, and these balloon like structure are known as vesicles, and inside the vesicles a chemical is filled, a chemical is filled. So here raha chemical, and for now I'm calling this chemical as neurotransmitter. So this chemical is known as neurotransmitter. Now what happened is कि जैसे ही वो नर्व इम्पल्स जो कि ऊपर वाले न्यूरॉन में जनरेट हुई थी वो रीच करती है टुवर्ड्स द नर्व एंडिंग. सो दिस इज द nerve impulse which is reaching towards the nerve ending of the above neuron. This vesicle fuses with the nerve ending wall, with the nerve ending wall. So here you are able to see the fusion with the fusion of the vesicle with the nerve ending, and as a result of it जो न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर इसके अंदर फिल्ड है वो न्यूरोट्रांसमीटर गैप में रिलीज हो जाता है, and that neurotransmitter is released inside the gap and it is known as synapse. And this neurotransmitter must attach at the dendrite. So dendrite must have receptor for its attachment. So yes, so dendrite are having receptors. So these are the receptors for the neurotransmitter which is just released from the previous neuron, and these neurotransmitter gets bind to these receptors, and after the binding to the receptors a new impulse is generated, a new impulse is generated in the next neuron. So very simple. So this is what is happening at the synapse. So what is synapse? It's a gap between the two neurons, and this area that I have drawn further, what this area contains: the nerve ending, the gap between the two neurons, and the dendrites of the further neuron. And the nerve impulse is generated in this neuron, in this blue one neuron. And how this nerve impulse is transmitted from the blue neuron to the next red neuron that I have drawn over here, I have explained it further. So this is the blue neuron जिसमें nerve impulse generate हुई थी, and that nerve impulse is reached at the nerve ending, and as the nerve impulse reached towards the nerve ending, the vesicles which are filled with the neurotransmitter, the most common neurotransmitter is the acetylcholine. There are other neurotransmitter as well. You may have heard of the dopamine, right? So neurotransmitter are of various types, like acetylcholine you can remember as an example, dopamine you can remember as an example. So the nerve impulse reaches at the nerve ending. What happens then? This vesicle fuses with this membrane. What happens then? The neurotransmitter released at the synapse, the gap between the two neurons, and this neurotransmitter then gets attached to its receptors which are present on the dendrite of the further neuron. and as the neurotransmitter attaches at the its receptor present on the further neuron, a new impulse is generated. So this is what is happening at the synapse level. So this was your question number first. I just hope you got it right. Let's move on to the question number second, and the question number second is very very important for your examination, and it is about the phytohormones. It is about what? The phytohormones, which are also known as plant hormones, right? And we also have to see what are the different types of plant hormone, and we will also remember their functions. So let's get started with the question number second. So what exactly are plant hormones or phytohormones? These are certain chemicals. So what are plant hormones? Plant hormones, which is also known as phytohormones, which are also known as PGR, which stand for plant growth regulators. So these three names are same thing: plant hormones, phytohormones, and PGR. Right. So what are these? So these are certain chemicals. These are certain chemicals, obviously released by the plant. Obviously released by the plant. And as these chemicals are released by the plants, these chemical will regulate the growth of a plant. Will regulate what? The growth of a plant. It may excited growth. It may excited growth related in its growth, right? Excited growth, or it may retard its growth. It can also retard its growth. So these are plant hormones. Very simple definition: these are certain chemicals released by the plants, and these chemicals will regulate the growth of a plant. It may increase its growth, or it may retard its growth. Like, and we have five different types of plant hormones. Five types. So let's study them one by one. So auxin is one of them. Auxin is one of them. So auxin is a plant hormone which is released by the shoot tip. So we have shoot tip. So just imagine it like a plant. So this is a stem, and it contains what? Leaves. So the leaves and stem together are known as what? Shoot. And right over you are able to see this shoot tip. So this shoot tip forms which hormone? Auxin hormone, right? So shoot tip produces auxin hormone, and this auxin, this auxin, after after producing, just remember this as it is, after producing, works towards the darker side, works towards the darker side. I will explain it. So just imagine like this. So this is soil, and this is your shoot, and this is your shoot tip. So this area is shoot tip. And what I'm doing is I am illuminating from this side, a light. From this side a light. I am illuminating this part with the light. Okay. So what happened then is, this shoot tip produces what hormone? Auxin hormone. So auxin hormone is produced over here. Auxin hormone is produced over here. But this auxin works only on the darker side. So this is the lighter side because light is falling on that side of the shoot tip. But this one over here, this area is the darker area because light is not falling on that area. So shoot tip produces auxin, but that auxin is concentrate on this area, on this area. And and at this area, auxin is responsible for the cell elongation. ऑक्सिन क्या काम करेगा? ऑक्सिन एक सेल का एलोंगेशन करेगा, एक सेल की लंबाई बढ़ाएगा. इट लाइक दिस, थिंक इट लाइक दिस. सो दिस इज अ सेल, दिस इज अ प्लांट cell and its nucleus. And after the application of auxin, it will grow in size. It will grow in size. This is known as cell elongation, and it's the first function of the auxin. And what will happen if the cell elongate towards the darker side? So the stem will bend towards the light source, and this phenomena of growth of stem part towards the light source is known as phototropism. Is known as what? Phototropism. Very simple. So it's the first function of the auxin. Just remember, auxin is produced at the shoot tip, but auxin works towards the darker side, not towards the lighter side. And towards the darker side, auxin is responsible for the cell elongation. And after the cell elongation, the shoot tip will turn towards the light source, and this growth is known as phototropism, towards the light growth. What are the other function of the auxin? Auxin is a rooting hormone. Auxin is a rooting hormone. That means you must have heard of, and you must have seen that ki if you have a rose stem and you put it in the water, so auxin is a rooting hormone, and it is responsible for the initiation of initiation of roots in in stem cutting. So it's a second function of the auxin. Let's just learn one more function of an auxin. So this is again soil, and this is shoot, and this one over here is the shoot tip. वी ऑलरेडी नो कि स्टेम का एक फीचर होता है कि स्टेम के ऊपर होते हैं नोड्स और इंटरनोड्स. तो स्टेम के ऊपर क्या होते हैं? Nodes. These lines are known as nodes, and you can appreciate these lines very clearly in the stem of a sugarcane, right? So these lines are known as nodes, and the distance between the two nodes are known as what? Internodes. And nodes are a place from where branches emerge out from a stem. So nodes are a place from branches are emerging out from the stem, right? So the shoot tip produces hormone. What hormone? Auxin hormone. The shoot tip produces what hormone? Auxin hormone. And auxin hormone retard it inhibit the growth of, yes, branches. It does not let the branches form from the nodes. So this function of auxin is known as apical dominance. This function is known as apical dominance. So just remember three function of the auxin. It is involved in the cell elongation. It is involved in the cell elongation, involved in the phototropic movement. It is a rooting hormone, initiate the root in the stem cutting, and it also responsible for the apical dominance, because the auxin is produced at the apex, at the shoot tip, and it produces the dominating effect. That means if auxin is there, the growth of the branch is inhibited at the node level, so no branches will emerges out, right? So this is the hormone auxin. Let's just move on to the next hormone, which is known as gibberellin, or in short, gibberellic acid. So it's a hormone. Gibberellic acid, again, it's a hormone and produced by the plant parts. And let's just see what its function. So the first function of the gibberellic acid is stem elongation. Mind it, it's stem elongation, not the cell elongation. Cell elongation में कौन सा हार्मोन रिस्पॉन्सिबल था? Yes, you are right, that auxin. मगर gibberellic acid is responsible for the stem elongation. Just remember it like this. So this is a stem, and I already told you these are the nodes. So after the application of the gibberellic acid, the stem will elongate, and the nodes will move further, right? So this is the first function of the GA that you must remember. And if you want to learn something more, the predominant effect of GA, gibberellic acid, in the stem elongation was seen in the sugarcane, right? So this is the first function of the gibberellic acid. The second function of the gibberellic acid, it is responsible for the seed germination. It is responsible for the seed germination. When you put seed inside the soil, so the germination process taking place, the plumule and the radicle, right? The plumule comes out, and the radical comes out. The radical will become root, the plumule will become shoot in the future. So seed germination is a very important phenomena in case of seed, and the hormone responsible for it was gibberellic acid. And the third function you can remember in case of GA, like it is responsible for the improvement of shape in shape of apples. So you are able to see the shape of the apple in the market, like it's a very beautiful shape, right? So I'm drawing it like this, you can understand it. Like, so this is the apple, and the shape can be improved of apple, and it can increase its market value. Obviously it can increase its market value, and it can be sell at the higher level. So the hormone which is responsible for the improvement of shape in apples are gibberellic acid. So this was the second hormone. Let's move on to the third hormone very fast. So the third hormone is what? Cytokinin. As the name suggests, it's a plant hormone, and it is responsible for the cell division. It is responsible for the cell division. In case of plant, you already know the cell division, the meiosis and the mitosis. So this is the parent cell. It divides into two daughter cell by the process called mitosis, and the hormone responsible for the cell division is cytokinin. The next function of the cytokinin is it is responsible for the opening of stomata. I just hope you remember what are stomatas. These are minute openings. बहुत ज़्यादा छोटी छोटी openings होती हैं स्टेम के सरफेस पे, लीव्स के सरफेस पे, और इन स्टोमेटा से गैसेस का एक्सचेंज होता है, ऑक्सीजन और कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड गैसेस का एक्सचेंज होता है, और इन्हीं स्टोमेटा से एक प्रोसेस भी होती है नोन एज ट्रांसपिरेशन, विच इज अ वेरी क्रूशियल प्रोसेस, right? And the opening and closing of stomata is done by the guard cells, and cytokinin hormones is responsible for the opening of stomata. So cytokinin is responsible for the opening of the stomata. So these are the two functions of the cytokinin. So let's just move to the fourth hormone, which is known as ABA, or abscisic acid. Abscisic acid, very important hormone, because this hormone is a growth retarding hormone. Growth retarding hormone. And it helps the plant to withstand the extreme condition. Just suppose कि एक plant है and the conditions are not favorable. वहाँ पर पानी नहीं है, या फिर वहाँ पे मिट्टी में nutrients की कमी है. There are so many reasons, right? So conditions are unfavorable. So this hormone is a very emergency hormone, growth retarding hormone known as abscisic acid. तो ये हार्मोन फिर प्लांट को उस अनफेवरेबल कंडीशन में जिंदा रखवाता है, विद स्टैंड करवाता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इसके फंक्शन क्या क्या है? सबसे पहले जो इसका फंक्शन है, इट क्लोजेस द स्टोमेटा. क्लोजेस the stomata. You already know which hormone is responsible for the opening of stomata, that is cytokinin. But for the closing of stomata, the hormone responsible is abscisic acid. Just suppose like it like this कि एक प्लांट के अंदर वाटर नहीं है, लाइक सॉइल में वाटर खत्म हो गया है, तो these opening known as stomata must be closed so that plant के अंदर का सारा पानी बाहर ना उड़ जाए by the process called transpiration, right? So abscisic acid is another hormone which is responsible for a growth retarding hormone, and it closes the stomata. So this is the first function of the abscisic acid. The second function of the abscisic acid, like it is responsible for the wilting of leaves. Wilting of leaves, you can connect this function by the first function as well. So just suppose कि एक plant में पानी की कमी हो गई है, so the leaves are the area कहाँ जहाँ से ट्रांसपिरेशन होता है, जहाँ से पानी उड़ता है. so प्लांट क्या करता है, अपनी सारी की सारी पत्तियों को विल्ट कर देता है, अपनी सारी की सारी पत्तियों को झाड़ देता है प्लांट के ऊपर से, सो दैट ट्रांसपिरेशन प्रोसेस को रोका जा सके, राइट? एंड द थर्ड फंक्शन of the abscisic acid, it is responsible for the dormancy of seed. Dormancy of seed. What is the meaning of dormancy? Just this is the soil, and this is the seed, and the conditions are not favorable. what does that mean? कि यहाँ पर water नहीं है, या फिर यहाँ पर air quality नहीं है, air नहीं है यहाँ पर, the soil is very soggy, right? So conditions are not favorable. So this seed must not germinate. तो इस सीड के अंदर कौन से हार्मोन का लेवल बढ़ जाता है? यस, यू आर एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. कौन सा हार्मोन? एब्सिसिक एसिड. एंड the seed will go into dormant stage. That means the seed won't germinate, and this is known as dormancy. So this was the fourth hormone. And the last hormone that I'm going to talk about, the plant hormone, is a very important hormone known as ethylene. This is the only hormone which is gaseous. So it's a gaseous hormone, ethylene, that plant produces. And this hormone, you can remember it like this: this hormone is responsible for the ripening of fruits. Ripening ऑफ फ्रूट्स, राइपनिंग ऑफ फ्रूट्स. ये हार्मोन फ्रूट्स को पकाता है, ये फ्रूट्स को जल्दी जल्दी पकाने में मदद करता है. एंड दैट हार्मोन इज द इथाइलिन. So these are the plant hormones, and I already told you the definition. These are certain chemical released by the plant which are involved in the growth or retarding of the growth. And we have seen the 5 different types of phytohormones, plant hormone, and with their function. Let's just quickly move on to the third question. So the question number third says that we have to describe the function of the following part of the brain. So the human brain, the human brain is made up of thousands of neurons. We just have seen the structure of a neuron, right? So the human brain is a collectively made up of thousands of neurons. Obviously there are other different types of cells are also present in the brain, but we are not going to discuss those. We are just sticking ourselves to the neuron. So human brain is made up of thousands of neurons, and the human brain is anatomically divided into 3 parts: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. So in the question we have mentioned that we have to describe the function of 3 important parts of the brain. So the first part is medulla. So medulla is a part of hindbrain. Medulla is a part of hindbrain. It is the last part of the brain. Last part of the brain. And from the medulla, another organ, or we can say another central nervous system part emerges, which is known as spinal cord. So imagine this is the last part of the brain, which is known as what? Medulla. And from the medulla, another things come out, and this is known as spinal cord. This is known as spinal cord. So medulla is the last part of the brain. It is a part of hindbrain, and from the medulla spinal cord emerges out. So what does medulla function, right? So medulla contains many involuntary centers. It contains many involuntary centers. It control many involuntary function in our body. Let's just see one by one. So what are the involuntary centers? These are the involuntary. What are the involuntary function? These are the certain functions which I cannot control on my will, right? So these are certain functions which I cannot control, so I must have involuntary centers. And medulla, which is a part of brain, contains many involuntary centers. तो कौन कौन से involuntary centers होते हैं medulla में? Let's see. सबसे पहले वहां पर होता है cardiac center. Cardiac center. Cardiac center. So this cardiac center controls our heart rate, right? दूसरा, वहां पर और कौन सा सेंटर होता है? वहां पर होता है respiratory center. एंड दिस रेस्पिरेटरी सेंटर कंट्रोल ब्रीदिंग. ये हमारी ब्रीदिंग को कंट्रोल करेगा. कार्डियक सेंटर हमारे किसको कंट्रोल करेगा? हार्ट रेट को. रेस्पिरेटरी सेंटर हमारे किसको कंट्रोल करेगा? ब्रीदिंग को कंट्रोल करेगा, राइट? व्हाट आर द अदर सेंटर? इट हैज गैस्ट्रिक सेंटर. व्हाट इज गैस्ट्रिक सेंटर? गैस्ट्रिक सेंटर हमारे स्टमक में HCl और एंजाइम के सिक्रीशन को कंट्रोल करेगा. So it is again involuntary center. What are the other involuntary centers in the medulla? Sneezing center. Sneezing center, I just hope you can get that. Another one is hiccup center, right? We have also a blood pressure monitor center, blood pressure center. So these are certain involuntary center which is present inside the medulla. So this is the first part of the brain that is given in the question. The second part is cerebellum. Another very important part of the brain. It is also part of hindbrain, right? And The most important function of cerebellum is it maintains posture of body, posture, or we can say that it maintains equilibrium or posture of body. Understand it like this. So I have drawn a strip over here. I have drawn a strip over here, and I asked one of the student to walk on that strip, right? So the student can easily walk in that strip. So what are the muscles are involved in walking? Legs muscles, obviously. पाँव की मसल, हमारे लेग्स की मसल इन्वॉल्व होंगी वॉकिंग करने के लिए, बट बैलेंस बनाने के लिए एक ब्रेन का पार्ट इन्वॉल्व है, एंड दैट पार्ट इज नोन एज सेरिबेलम. One thing I also want to mention over here is in the bubble that you can remember, there is another part which is also involved in maintaining posture, and that is internal ear. Yes, it might be surprising for you, but our internal ear is also involved in maintaining the posture of body. Now you are like you maybe wondered like, what is internal ear? We have only ears. What is internal ear? So from outside you are able to see the external ear, the ear pinna. So this is your ear pinna that you can touch. This is comes under the external ear. External ear, sorry for that. External ear, and from that external ear a tube emerges, and we have kaan ka parda, we call that eardrum. So up to here we have external ear, and from that we have something called middle ear. So this one is the middle ear, and from the middle ear emerges what? The internal ear. So this area is also responsible for maintaining the posture. But if question may come in your exam, then you always have to mention the cerebellum. If the examiner asks what are the other portion which are involved in maintaining the posture, then you should answer that internal ear is also responsible for maintaining the posture, right? So this was the second part of the third question. The third part of the third question is another brain part जिसका नाम क्या है? Hypothalamus. We have already discussed hypothalamus in the previous video in the human reproduction second part, but let's just understand it again. So hypothalamus is a part of brain, particularly it's a part of forebrain. ये forebrain का part है, and hypothalamus look like this. So it's a part of forebrain, and hypothalamus के just नीचे we already know, hypothalamus के just नीचे we already know a gland is located known as pituitary. So this is pituitary gland, and this part is hypothalamus. And hypothalamus special type के neurons का बना है. These neurons can produce and secrete hormones. These are neurons. Neurons का function आपको पता है कि these are involved in the transmission of nerve impulse. But hypothalamus is made up of neurosecretory cells. Neurosecretory cells. That means these are special types of cells which also secrete hormones. You already know. You can just go and watch the part 1 of the human reproduction where I have explained the hormones of the hypothalamus. But just for the human reproduction, the hormones are related. But for now, hypothalamus also contains many involuntary centers. Yes, just like medulla, it also contains many involuntary centers. So what are the involuntary center does hypothalamus contain? Number 1, hunger center. जब हमें भूख लगती है तो हमें सिग्नल कहाँ से आता है? हाइपोथैलेमस से आता है. So hunger center, yes, very good. Second, thirst center. हमें प्यास भी लगती है और प्यास लगने का सिग्नल भी कहाँ से आता है? हाइपोथैलेमस से आता है. The third, when we eat and when we feel like we are full, हम और ज़्यादा नहीं खा सकते. So feeling full center, and last but not least, temperature center. We already know कि हम humans का temperature हमेशा constant रहता है, and that is 37 degrees Celsius because we are homeotherms. We are homeotherms, or also known as warm-blooded animal. एनिमल्स, दैट मीन्स हमारा टेम्परेचर हमेशा कांस्टेंट रहेगा इररिस्पेक्टिव, बाहर एनवायरनमेंट में कुछ भी टेम्परेचर हो, बाहर सपोज 0 डिग्री है, 40 डिग्री है, 10 डिग्री है, इट डजेंट मैटर, बट मेरी बॉडी का टेम्परेचर हमेशा कांस्टेंट रहेगा, और वो कितना रहेगा, 37 डिग्री सेल्सियस, एंड this is the function of what, hypothalamus. So I just hope you will remember these four involuntary center present in the hypothalamus, and these centers that you will remember of the hypothalamus. Very important question for your exam. Let's move on to the question number fourth, and again very important question for school examination, where we have to differentiate between the tropic movements related to the plants, and the nastic movements again related to the plants. So let's just discuss these. So these are two types of movement present inside the plant, the tropic movement and the nastic movement. Let's just differentiate them one by one. So ट्रॉपिक मूवमेंट्स क्या होती हैं? ये ट्रॉपिक मूवमेंट्स ऐसी मूवमेंट्स होती है प्लांट के अंदर जिसमें ना ग्रोथ इन्वॉल्व होती है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल दिस इज अ स्टेम, दिस इज अ लीफ, and light is coming, and this stem will grow towards the light. So this stem will grow towards the light, and the growth is involved over here. As a result of it, this is a tropic movement. But when we talk about the nastic movements, these are those movements in which growth is not involved, so we have two types of movement in case of plant, the tropic movements and the nastic movements. In case of tropic movements, the growth is involved, but in case of nastic movement, the growth is not involved. And right now, you on your screen, you are able to see a nastic movements. When we touch the leaves of a touch me not plant, the leaves just simply closes. It's a movement, but the growth is not involved in this kind of movement, so it's a nastic movement. So this is the first difference between the two movements. The second difference between the two movements is the tropic movements are directional movements. They are occurring in a particular direction. For example, you're able to see the growth of the plant is going towards the light, but nastic movements are non-directional movement. There is not particular direction fixed, right? So this is the second difference. The third difference, the nastic movements or and the tropic movements are the movements in which growth is involved, and we already know growth is irreversible. So these movements are irreversible. एक प्लांट बड़ा हो चुका है, वो दोबारा से छोटा नहीं होगा. सो दीज आर इरिवर्सिबल मूवमेंट. बट nastic movements, the leaves are closing down, the leaves are closing of the touch me not plant, but after certain period of time the leaves are again open. So very important, this movement, nastic movement, is reversible. Next, sorry for that. Fourth, the tropic movements are found in all kind of plant, found in all plants. The tropic movements are the movements which are found in which growth is involved, and each and every plant grows in size, right? So the tropic movements are found in all type of plant. We have different types of tropic movement that we will discuss in different lecture, like phototropism, growth of plant towards the light; geotropism, growth of plant towards the soil or towards the gravity; hydrotropism, growth of plant part towards the water, etc. But nastic movements are not found in all plant. They are present in some specialized plant like Mimosa pudica, touch me not plant, touch me not plant, touch me not plant. And the scientific name of the touch me not plant is Mimosa pudica. Yes. And the fifth last difference between the tropic movements and the nastic movement is the tropic movements are generally slow as compared to the nastic movement. So when you touch the leaves of a touch me not plant, it instantly closes, but the tropic movements are pretty slow as compared to the nastic movement. So this was the question number fourth for you, the difference between the tropic movements and the nastic movements. Let comes to the last question, That is question number fifth. And we have to understand the how glucose level in our blood, glucose level in our blood are maintained or regulated. Let's just understand like this. हमने खाना खाया, we intake the food. As a result of it, the food are absorbed from the walls of the small intestine. And here's a question for you: what are the modification that has done inside the small intestine जिससे खाना बड़ी जल्दी से absorb होता है? Comment down in the video section below. So when we intake the food, the food is absorbed from the small intestine, and the absorbed food rightly goes into the blood. And we mainly absorb, क्या चीज़, ग्लूकोज हम लोग एब्जॉर्ब करते कहाँ से? अपने फूड में, फ्रॉम द स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन. सो द लेवल ऑफ ग्लूकोज आर राइजिंग इनसाइड द ब्लड आफ्टर वी टेक अ मील, राइजिंग inside the blood after a meal. So we have to regulate the blood glucose level, and for that we have a gland known as pancreas. So pancreas is a very important gland in our body, and this pancreas contains two types of cells in its endocrine portion. You already know that pancreas has dual function, the exocrine function and the endocrine function. Exocrine function related to the release of enzymes, but endocrine function is related to the release of hormones. And this pancreas endocrine portion contains two types of cells, the alpha cells and the beta cells. Just pay attention over here. The alpha cells produces a hormone which is known as glucagon. Mind it, not glycogen, not glycogen. It's the hormone glucagon. And the beta cell releases another important hormone that you all may be familiarized of, that is insulin. So what is the function of glucagon and what is the function of insulin? So let's come to the insulin first. Insulin decreases the blood glucose level. It decreases the blood glucose level, whereas the glucagon, the hormone which are produced by the alpha cells, the glucagon, obviously it must have to increase the blood glucose level. So we have two different hormone, the insulin and the glucagon, which are released from the pancreas. And the insulin is produced by the beta cells of pancreas, and glucagon is produced by the alpha cells of the pancreas. Insulin decreases the blood glucose level, whereas glucagon increases the blood glucose level. Hence these two hormones, very important, are functioning opposite to each other. And when hormones are functioning opposite to each other, those hormones are known as antagonistic. So that is how the level of glucose are regulated or maintained inside the blood. If the level of glucose are rising, for suppose the level of glucose are rising, then which hormone gonna come? Insulin. Then it will decrease the blood glucose level. And for suppose the level are now decreasing inside the blood, so which hormone now gonna come? That is glucagon, and it will increase the blood glucose level. So this is how the blood glucose levels are maintained inside our body. So I have discussed all the 5 important questions that may gonna come in your exam. So best of luck for that.